So what's new in the madcap Boris Johnson government? Well, there's now digital posters being displayed on digital notice boards in about 3,000 primary schools up and down the country. Pro-Brexit, pro-Johnson. It's turning more and more into a fascistic regime, isn't it? He's now putting out adverts in kids' schools. The type of school that my son would go to is now displaying these adverts. Boris Johnson wants to deliver Brexit. Parliament hasn't been able to deliver the will of the people. Oh, Boris Johnson has promised to inject 20,000 more police into the police force. He's going to fund the NHS and all this kind of thing. Doesn't mention the 10 years of Tory austerity that led to this position. And yesterday, he actually stormed out of Parliament because he was facing a point of order on how lawfully he acted when he prorogued Parliament. He had an argument with the Speaker, waved him off and stormed out. Is this what we want leading the country? Is this the kind of person we want in charge? A demagogue, a person who doesn't answer any questions about his conduct or his policies or the way he wants to do things, a person who just storms out of the chamber when he's faced with two awkward confrontations. He faced 3 hours of grilling yesterday, and then when that point of order came forward, he was off. Couldn't see him for dust. He was gone. He's putting out billboards or notice boards in primary schools that actually advocate his position. He wants to be seen as this kind of martyr, this kind of man who sacrificed his career or sacrificed himself for Brexit. This is exactly what he wants. So his hardline Brexiteers can get behind him and rally around him as this sacrificial lamb for his cause. This all comes from the prorogation of Parliament, where he's now slamming the Supreme Court judges, saying they're traitors and they're enemies and all this. It's all to do with making Boris Johnson look like a martyr. And he's doing that in conjunction with the propaganda that we're seeing, not only in primary schools, but on the TV as well. Turn on your TV and you'll see, get ready for Brexit, like adverts and things. Storming out of Parliament, he's trying to be like Trump. He's trying to emulate Donald Trump in this neo-fascistic fashion, where he doesn't have to answer any questions. He doesn't have to face the anger of anybody who doesn't like the way he's doing things, because the anger that should be aimed at Boris Johnson for acting illegally or unlawfully is the correct term. For acting unlawfully, the anger that should be aimed at him for that has been deflected onto the Supreme Court judges who said he acted unlawfully. And they're being branded enemies, they're being branded traitors, etc., etc. Their pasts are being delved into, whether they were associated with Labour or whether they were associated with the EU in any way. It's not the point. The judiciary in this country is independent. It doesn't act on its own opinions. It acts on the law. And the law said that you cannot prorogue Parliament in order to get what you want and force it through. You can't do it. It's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. And that's why Parliament was recalled yesterday. And that's why Boris Johnson faced that point of order that caused him to storm out. Is this what politics has become? It's become all about personality, all about, I want what I want and that's it. I want to leave the EU, but not at any cost. Not at the cost of jobs, at the cost of lives, at the cost of economic collapse. That is not what I want. That is not what I voted for. I voted to leave the European Union. I did not vote for Boris Johnson to come in like a wrecking ball and absolutely smash the place up, drag us out over a cliff and potentially wreck the country. Now, of course, millionaires like Boris Johnson, like Nigel Farage, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, they'll be all right if the economy starts to collapse, because all their money is shuffled away offshore. It's shuffled away in Dublin and in Singapore and places like that, where they won't have to bring their money into the UK sphere and actually face the collapse. They won't be affected all that much. But regular working people like you and me, we will be affected. Our wages will stagnate, our jobs will go down, our workers' rights, many of which are enshrined in EU law, such as the right to an 11-hour uninterrupted break between shifts. So if you work shifts, you're allowed 11 hours uninterrupted by law. That is the law, 11 hours uninterrupted between shifts. And that is enshrined in EU law. So it's UK law, but the EU is safeguarding it. And if we leave on a no-deal Brexit, any potential government could come along and strip away, potentially, that legislation. The same with the rights to paid holidays and paid sick leave. They're our laws, but they are enshrined by the EU. They are safeguarded by the EU. So if we leave on no deal, that could be stripped away by any future government. And that is a very scary thought, because many of the people who are spearheading the Leave campaign, the hardline Brexiteer no deal campaign, are millionaires. No doubt they employ people. So what they want to do is they want to come out on no deal so they don't have to follow the laws, that they can just come along and they can get a government in like Johnson's government, and if he manages in the future to get a majority, he can force through legislation that strips away workers' rights, takes it away. Now, of course, there's the other side of the EU that would not allow large-scale public ownership. So it wouldn't allow the public to have a monopoly on things such as the railways, things that Corbyn wants to actually renationalise, like the railways, the mail service, the NHS, completely make public. The EU would never allow that, because the EU is a privatisation machine, and that is why I voted to leave. One of the reasons I voted to leave. I did not vote to leave so that my vote could be hijacked by a hard right coup who would then strip away my rights as a worker, my son's future rights as a worker, my generations and future generations, their rights as workers, as and when they wanted. Those rights should be enshrined, those rights should be protected, and the EU does that. Now, I'm not saying we should remain, I still think we should leave, but it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done by a government or in a way that actually safeguards the good things that we get out of the EU, or most of the good things, as many good things as possible that we get out of the EU, such as workers' rights. Those things should be enshrined into UK law and untouchable, and takes away the negative. So it would give us the capacity to actually fully renationalise the health service, the railways, the mail service, etc., and do what we want and create a better country for ourselves, and actually do something about it, and actually create a better standard of living for our people, for the British people, without jeopardising workers' rights, because this whole thing has been hijacked by a bunch of hard right disaster capitalist millionaires who don't care about anybody but their own pockets. It's all they care about. They don't care about you, they don't care about me, they don't care about workers' rights. All they care about is lining their own pockets, and they know. Crispin Odey, who was the single largest donor of Boris Johnson's leadership campaign for the Conservative Party, he bet £350 million on British business failing in the event of a no-deal Brexit. These are disaster capitalists. They're betting on failures in the event of a no-deal Brexit. They're betting on disaster because they can make money off it, and then they can shuffle it offshore with the rest of it. Well, average Joes like me or you, we go to work and we're going to suffer the consequences because this Tory government has no idea what the fuck it's doing. Has no idea how to handle it. Theresa May had no idea. Boris Johnson seems to think he can pound the table and get his own way, and it's not working very well. It's not working at all so far. He looks set to be the shortest running Prime Minister in our history. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.